The Scar Essence Mine, 30th of August, 2023. The Humble Blood Rune, a sought-after catalytic rune whose consumption allows the casting of ancient magics, the swooshing of the Scythe of Viter, and whatever word beginning with S suits the Sanguinesti staff. The Blood Rune has a whole host of fun uses, but in recent years has come under fire from players for just how tedious it can be to accumulate enough of these magical stones. Currently, most players trying to upkeep their Scythe or Sanguinesti staff opt to buy them from the Grand Exchange or magic shops, competing with each other as they hop through worlds in a desperate bid to stock up enough for future PVM sessions. While so-called shopscape is the done thing, shopping and hopping isn't exactly the most riveting content. For a while now, we've seen affected players suggest the addition of rune packs for some of the runes that don't currently have them, like Blood, Death, Soul, or even Astral runes. While we agree this would likely alleviate some of the frustration with upkeeping some of these runes, you'd still be competing with others, hopping through worlds, and spending more time in a shop interface than out in Gielinor. We think we can do better than Blood Rune packs. After all, we have a whole skill dedicated to crafting runes. Why don't we leverage that? We've done similar in the past with Drew's Sandstone Grinder, which gave players an option to use mining to cut down on shopping and hopping for sand, ultimately getting the item thereafter while being out in the world, so long as they have the GP to afford Drew's services. To that end, we've set out to make something with the following goals in mind. Allow players to obtain blood runes extremely quickly. As a bonus, expand this system to runes beyond blood runes while making sure all of the above goals still apply. Avoid impacting the economy for any non-iron players. Players should be financially disincentivized from engaging with this content if their aim is to sell the runes on. Ensure that the gameplay is thematically tied to runecraft. Ensure that the gameplay loop itself is quick, intuitive, and easy to access. With all of the above in mind, let's introduce the star of today's show, Ventriculus, the Abyssal Extractor. The name might be a bit of a mouthful, but the aims couldn't be simpler. Ventriculus is a part of our design to give players a fast way to get runes, any kind, not just blood runes, that's tied to gameplay and integrated with the runecraft skill without adversely impacting the main game economy. Before we get started, you might be wondering where we'd even put the extractor itself, given that somebody would likely have noticed something so unusual by now. As luck has it, some of you have recently uncovered a new area with strong ties to runecraft, the Scar. Note that to access the Abyssal Extractor, you will require at least partial completion of Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire, since you'll require access to the Scar in the first place. Access via the rift near the Temple of the Eye, which you might be familiar with from the Guardians of the Rift minigame, the Scar has a habit of sucking in leftover runes and essence from careless adventurers who keep dropping the things. Inside the Scar, these leftovers move through the tissues, sinew, and synapses, resulting in amalgamations of runes, essence, and flesh that defy the laws of nature. The abyss itself grows around these amalgamations, so you'll need a spot of manual labor to split them apart and extract anything useful. That's where mining comes in, and our proposed gameplay loop begins. With a little mining expertise, level 66 mining to be precise, a pickaxe, and a lot of putting your back into it, you'll be able to mine tainted essence. These are the grotesque mixtures of runes, essence, and flesh that we mentioned earlier. From here, you have two options. We'll start with the most interesting bit, making extracts. By removing the wrong runic energy and compressing what's left, the extractor can provide you with extracts that are bound to specific types of runic energy. These stackable extracts function as catalysts while runecrafting, allowing you to craft significant bonus quantities of the rune they correspond to. A spot of mining in eventual exchange for huge quantities of extra runes sounds like a pretty good deal, so what's the catch? The catch is Haggis, a member of the ZMI, Zamarakian Magical Institute, who wound up lost in the abyss and is now, to put it bluntly, utterly unhinged. Haggis has his heart set on returning from his adventure with loot worth losing his mind for. He knows the Ventriculus better than anybody, and he'll let you use it, you guessed it, for a price. We'll cover the exact costs later on in the blog, but for now, keep in mind that these extracts don't come free. There's even a handy coffer nearby where you can store your coins so you don't have to grab them from the bank every time you want to get your hands on more extracts. Alternatively, you can clean your tainted essence and stack up large quantities of pure essence, approximately 10,000 pure essence per hour. Haggis appreciates that many of you out there groan at the sight of pure essence following a showdown with the Great Olm, or that some of you even leave behind the pure essence that Zora so graciously provides, to be consumed by the toxic wastes. Obtaining pure essence in this way won't cost you anything. Haggis knows that you'll be more than willing to part with your GP once you process that essence into extracts. He's playing the long game. So you use tainted essence to make extracts, which serve as powerful catalysts for runecraft. Simple. Here's some early on concept art showing off the ventriculus itself, Haggis, tainted essence, and the various extracts themselves. There are 4 variants of these extracts: warped, twisted, mangled, and scarred, with different variants catalyzing different groups of runes so that every type of rune in the game can be multiplied using one of these extracts. Crafting runes with the corresponding extract in your inventory will multiply the amount of runes you make when using any essence, rune, pure, or Dayalt, to runecraft. Note that extracts' catalytic effects won't work at the Orania altar. They'll only work for specifically targeted runes. On the face of things, it's a pretty simple system to understand, so let's get stuck into the nitty-gritty and answer the big questions you probably have at this stage. How many runes can I craft per hour using extracts, and how much will it cost? Balancing. Before we get stuck into numbers, let's make clear what we're up against. In a perfect world, the players who've been asking us for blood rune packs for all this time could, in theory, obtain around 100,000 blood runes per hour at current rates. This isn't entirely realistic due to delays when world hopping, finding the NPC to trade with again, and competing with other players also buying the same rune as you, but it's a solid ballpark. With that in mind, runecraft with extracts obtained from the Scar Essence mine needs to result in a hefty number of runes, while remaining expensive enough that players would incur a net loss by selling the runes to each other, thus pricing these bonus runes out of the wider economy. Understandably, it doesn't really make sense to put something like this together for only blood runes. Players can at times need vast quantities of all kinds of runes for all kinds of goals. So we've aimed to put together a system that applies to every rune and at a price point that makes sense for each of them. While the main problem we're trying to solve here is the sheer amount of time spent upkeeping weapons like the Scythe of Viter or Sanguinesti Staff for some endgame players, by expanding extracts to all types of runes, you'll be able to put your skills to use and save some time gathering Chaos runes to sell for Tokkul, or perhaps even stock up on a whole bunch of Trident charges earlier on in the game. The prices for extracts are all based on currently existing shop prices, with exceptions for Wrath runes and combination runes, since these aren't sold for GP by any NPCs, though we've aimed to ensure the cost per rune for these types remains higher than their well-established values on the Grand Exchange. To explain how the 4 types of extracts are going to work and tie into this, here's a handy table. Sticking with blood runes as an example, obtaining a scarred extract from the extractor would set you back 24,000 GP. Assuming you have no other bonuses, no blood essence, no raiments of the eye, using 1 pure essence on the blood altar while having a scarred extract in your inventory would give you 61 blood runes in total. If you had 27 pure essence and 27 scarred extracts, you'd wind up with 1,647 blood runes in total in exchange for the 648,000 GP you'll have spent on the extracts. Keeping that example in mind, it's pretty easy to imagine how quickly you'll be able to stack up runes using extracts, assuming you have the GP to obtain enough extracts in the first place. Now, these bonus runes are applied additively, meaning the bonuses you get are on top of modifiers like the Raiments of the Eye passive effect, or Blood Essence. We reckon players will be able to obtain roughly 25,000 extracts per hour, assuming they have the cash to afford them all. With these 25,000 extracts, we anticipate that speedy players using the so-called true blood altar could expect to craft somewhere in the region of 200,000 to 250,000 blood runes per hour, depending on other factors like the use of giant versus colossal pouches, or how quickly they're able to complete runs. While things like the Raiments of the Eye or blood essences do increase the number of blood runes a player might obtain, the difference is relatively low since these bonuses stack additively. Of course, making 25,000 scarred extracts would set our bloodthirsty player back a whopping 600 million GP. Selling these blood runes onto other players would result in you losing roughly half of the GP you spent to make the runes in the first place, and this is how we keep these vast quantities of runes from entering the main economy. You're free to sell them on if you'd like, but you'll wind up losing absolutely massive quantities of GP to do so, and nobody enjoys losing huge quantities of GP for no reason. Now, these extracts aren't exclusive to blood runes, though we imagine those are what most of you reading are interested in, but also extend to others too. Perhaps you're looking to stock up on fire runes and never have to worry about your Trident of the Swamps charges ever again. You'll be able to net somewhere in the region of 1,500,000 to 2 million elemental runes in an hour if you like, assuming you have the funds. Are you spotting a recurring theme here? Other methods like Abyss rune crafting will result in somewhere ranging from 150,000 to 200,000 of your chosen rune per hour, while using extracts at the current blood and soul altars will net you somewhere in the region of 80,000 to 90,000, 50,000 to 60,000 blood and soul runes per hour, respectively. While these are some very rough napkin math figures, your specific mileage may vary slightly. Ultimately, what we're trying to drive home is that extracts will allow you to obtain vast quantities of your chosen rune, assuming you're able to pay vast quantities of GP to obtain the extracts, and that selling these crafted runes on will result in hefty losses for you, so you should only use extracts or craft runes you're planning to use yourself, thus keeping these runes out of the main economy as much as possible and not adversely impacting their price for non-iron players. Closing thoughts. Beyond the gameplay loop and numbers we've shared, there's not a whole lot to say about the content of the proposal, but we'd like to take a moment to share some closing thoughts and some additional context that might address some lingering questions. While we touched on it earlier in the blog, some of you might still be wondering, why not just release blood rune packs? And while we completely understand where you're coming from, we'd like to reiterate and make clear exactly why we're taking a slightly more involved approach. Rune packs don't really solve the underlying issue that constantly world hopping, buying up as much as you can, and competing with other irons just isn't particularly fun or engaging gameplay. Adding packs doesn't fix or solve Shopscape, just expedites it. Additionally, we have an entire skill whose sole purpose is crafting runes. Neglecting runecraft as a solution to this issue doesn't feel like the best approach to take from a game design perspective, since we'd like players to be out and interacting with the world of Gielinor as much as possible, as opposed to cycling through interfaces for ages in order to stock up for a lengthy PvM session. Ultimately, shops are probably a little too good, but they've been this way for years and years, so we feel it's better to work around shops and provide a better, gameplay-focused alternative. Even though this approach is a tad more involved than making something like rune packs, it's still very light on time requirements from developers and artists, so it won't adversely impact any of the other content we've got planned in the coming weeks. There you have it, Ventriculus the Extractor, our proposed gameplay solution to the woes of upkeeping weapons like the Scythe of Viter or Sanguinesti Staff on iron accounts, expanded to all runes to suit more use cases. Pay up a hefty sum, obtain stackable extracts. If you're short on essence, then use the Scar Essence Mine to obtain significant quantities of pure essence. Use extracts to craft massive bonus quantities of specific runes with the Runecraft skill. Use your massive supply of bonus runes for any activities you see fit. Seems simple enough? Good. Now it's up to you to let us know what you think across all the usual channels, where we'll have an opportunity to see your feedback and make any necessary tweaks, changes, or updates before giving you the chance to vote on the Scar Essence Mine in an upcoming poll, alongside the Leagues 4 Trailblazer Reloaded Rewards poll. You can also discuss this update on our official forums on the 2007scape subreddit, the Steam forums, or the community-led OSRS Discord in the Game Update channel. For more info on the above content, check out the official Old School wiki. The Old School team. That ends the official post. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And now, we'll get into my thoughts. So my first time going through the blog, I got a little bit confused by some of the numbers. And it was really in this part where it's talking about how many runes you could create and how much it would cost. So they said you can obtain roughly 25,000 extracts per hour. And with these 25,000 extracts, you could create up to 250,000 blood runes per hour. Initially, when I read this, I kind of ignored this per hour. So I saw this as being 25,000 extracts, 250,000 blood runes, 600 million GP. That would result in blood runes being ridiculously expensive. Then I went back to the table and saw that the Scarred Extract, which is what you'd use for the blood runes, would result in 60 bonus runes per essence at 400 GP per rune. So the 25,000 extracts would get you 1,500,000 blood runes for 600 million GP. So the cost would be much more beneficial. I saw somebody somewhere post that why would I spend 600 million GP to get 250k blood runes when if I did that through Shopscape at 400 each, it would cost me 100 million. And the reason is because both you and I interpreted the post wrong. It really would still be 400 each. Just the numbers here were a little bit confused. So I'm going to share my opinion of this potential update. First and foremost, I was not a fan of potentially adding rune packs for blood runes or all of the other higher level runes. So I'm very happy that this update does not do that. I really like that this is a good way to make the players actually train rune crafting skill. Crazy, I know, to get all these extra runes that they need. Which, again, bypasses Shopscape for endgame Ironman, which I'm a big fan of that. I like that it's applicable to all runes and not just blood runes. I think it would have been really silly if it was just focused on blood runes and then all the other runes kind of behaved in a different way. So I like that this is general and consistent. And I like that it likely would not impact the economy for non-Iron players. I could potentially see one way for, I guess, people to troll by spending a whole bunch of cash on and just artificially reducing the price of these runes even further than they already are from Guardians of the Rift. I don't think it would be wise or likely, but it could happen, and I think that's something to be concerned about. But the fact that this likely won't impact the economy for non-Iron players is potentially also the biggest con to me. The final pro to this proposal is that this guy's name is Haggis, and for those of you who don't know, Haggis is basically the ground up undesirable parts of a sheep, so the heart, liver, and lungs mixed with a whole bunch of other stuff, and which is pretty much, I don't know, sounds disgusting to me. And that is also seems to be what's piled up behind him is just a giant pile of haggis, and it's convenient because the blog describes it, what we're making, as leftovers and moves through the tissues, sinew, and synapses. The amalgamation of runes, essence, and flesh that defy the laws of nature is effectively haggis. So moving to the cons now. I think that was great. I think mains will never do this, and I'm still kind of processing how I feel about having updates cater to Iron Men in general, and specifically to Iron Men. I don't really have an issue solving Iron Men concerns, per se, but it does kind of seem weird to me to make an update that mains will absolutely never, ever do. It just seems kind of weird to me. I think the gameplay loop is a little boring. It's basically just mining essence with extra steps. And still results in way faster rune crafting and way faster gathering, but it seems kind of boring. I think there could be more inventive with that. I don't like how many runes can be crafted in an hour. Right? They say to 250,000 blood runes in an hour. I think that is a ridiculously high amount. Even if it would cost a whole bunch of money, I still think that is just ridiculous. It basically makes it such that people would only ever engage in this content for, I don't know, 2-3 hours total. Maybe, if you're playing a little bit more than that, but that's a lot of blood runes an hour. I think that number should be drastically. And then the last kind of negative issue that I have with this is that it effectively puts a cap on the price of runes. That's probably not a big deal now, because Guardians of the Rift basically tanked the price of every single rune in the game. I remember back when I was still playing on my main, like making mud runes was like actually insane money, and very, very good rune crafting experience, and say very long gone by to those days. Definitely more of a concern a few years ago, but I still think it's worthwhile to bring up, even if it's just for consideration in future updates. Overall, though, I really like the approach, and if I had to vote today, I think I would probably vote yes. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.